Dr. Kidero, thank you so much for making time for us here on Pioneer Governors. It's a pleasure to have you. Let's begin with where you've been. What have you been up to? After the election, you've been off the public life. Talk to us about how life has been.
Well, I'm quite excited for this invitation to have a chat with you. Of course, we had the elections in last year. Yeah. And as the results came out, as illegitimate or as invalid as they were, a new governor came in. And you'll recall I went to the inauguration. I did a handover, and probably I'm one of the very few governors who handed over. And I wished him well, but I also did tell him that running Nairobi is not a walk and in the park. And since he was the senator for Nairobi before, and he claimed to have known or had issues of Nairobians, I even offered that, if he needs to consult, we are available because we have the institutional memory. And we wished him well. And of course, Nairobians can see what has happened. Yeah. And as we say, that life is a race. You do your bit, hand over the baton, which I did on that day, and go do other things. Yeah. There is life outside public service. So I've reverted to private life, doing my own things, but still working with communities.
Okay. Okay. You talked about it being illegitimate, his win. However, when there was a petition filed in court, you applied to be enjoined, and that was rejected, with the judge finding that it was out of time. There was room for you to have contested the win in the constitutional set timelines. Was it an afterthought for you to apply, because you did not do so?
It wasn't. You'll recall, yeah, the issue of the logarithms, the votes. If you take the votes which were counted for the governor, they were much more than the consolidated votes for the MCAs. They were much more than the consolidated votes for the members of parliament in Nairobi. And they were much more even than the presidential votes. So is it to say that some people went and voted for governor and did not vote for president? They voted for governor and they did not vote for members of parliament. And then there is that constant figure, which was, we know what the issues are, we know how it went to court even for the presidential, and IBC refused to open the servers. And I did realize that, it was going to be a waste of time, because our case was going to be contingent on what happened on the servers.
Yeah, so you then chose not to file a petition of your own person as now former governor. Yes,
but to support the voters who had a petition. But even so, I still knew that it was going to be long haul, because it was an electronic manipulation. It was in the servers. So unless you're allowed to look at the servers, yeah, you'd never find out what happened.
So do you today recognize Governor Sonko as the legitimately elected governor of Nairobi?
He was sworn in. He's the governor.
But you have concerns about
we had issues with the process, yeah, and the process wasn't just Nairobi. We know senators who had issues that I have. We know the other governors who had issues that I have. We know even other members of parliament. And of course, the contestation in the Supreme Court in terms of what could have happened, that even though the ruling went the way it did, but the big question of what happened in the servers, nobody has ever answered.
So let me ask it differently. What do you attribute your failure to be re-elected as Nairobi governor to?
The servers. So the IBC servers. I had the majority of the people, and even all the opinion polls before that. I was the one who was leading. The results obviously were rather surprising. But even as surprising as they were, life must continue after that. And that's exactly what I'm doing.
Okay. Let's go to what the current governor has been saying. There's a lot of challenges in the county, whether it's the potholes, the flooding, the garbage, the list is endless. And when I interviewed him, and in various other interviews he's conducted, he blames your administration and cartels in the county of Nairobi as to the state of Nairobi. What do you say to that?
I think, I would be very hesitant to discuss the current governor because he's the one who's got the mandate. And I want to believe that probably he's doing the best he can. And probably the best that he's doing or the best that he can is not satisfactory. That's a different point. But as I'd said when I was handing over to him, that running Nairobi is not a walk in the park.
When he blames your administration, he says Nairobi County is in the mess it's in because of Dr. Kidero and those who are in his government.
I was gonna get to that point.
Yeah.
I think he needs to look elsewhere because blaming will not help. If Kidero never patched the potholes, there would be craters now. There would not be potholes. Nairobi, every Nairobian produces 500 grams of waste every day, which makes it 2,000 tons every day being produced. And if at all they were never collected during my time, by the time I think even all the Nairobi buildings, including KICC, would have been submerged under garbage. We did what we could. We increased the collections. We found Nairobi used to collect 200-300 tons. We were collecting 2,000 by the time long before we left. We bought lorries. We were working. We started the process of getting investments to turn garbage into power. Yeah. We passed the environmental law. We did bring up the strategic plan for the environment. The planning, we did a document, the Nairobi Integrated Urban Planning, which had various facets, which the environmental management is one of them. So all that is petty excuses. And now is a year down the road because the budget, whereas I did the budget for 2017, 2018, but we left before it was disbursed. And this has been disbursed now. What have they done with it? It's not Kidero and his team who are spending that money. Yeah. He claims that he's collecting more money than I used to collect. You saw the report that was given by the controller of budget. Mm-hmm. They said that year on year, Nairobi was 1 billion shillings down. My mathematics tells me that when you're up is plus, if you're down is minus. So in the process, even as much as they say they've collected more money, they've collected 1 billion shillings less than we collected the previous year, that is 2016 and 2017. But also what has happened is I left with all my CECs, who are the implementing arm of my government, and plus the chief officers. So I really don't understand when he says that it's my people who are he's fired all the people whom I left. Right.
So if there's evidence of whatever wrongdoing he may allege, it should be presented to
Absolutely, absolutely. And take actions because he has the power.
To take action.
2 weeks ago, I said he should stop being a crybaby. I'm glad that he stopped crying. I'm glad he listened to me.
These cartels, the cartels he speaks about that were there are there. Did you experience them?
I think cartels can be defined in many ways. Cartels are people who go against the law, people who want to do things the way they used to do. When I got in, I found cartels, and I broke those cartels. Him saying that the cartels are there, let him use the powers that he has to make sure things are done and processes are done in the right way.
Yeah. Seated down here today, what do you tell Nairobians was your legacy? What can they sit back and in the 5 years of you being the county boss, can they say, yes, this is what Kidero did for us and we can see it today? Because right now, the lot of criticism he's receiving is because of the breakdown across the board.
We did quite a lot of things. One is I did a task force. Nairobi, despite being the capital city, in the exams of KCPE and the KCSE, we were not at the top. So I formed a task force, and the current CC for Education, Mudhoni Uko, was a member of that task force. And we identified all the ills that were bedeviling Nairobi and the reasons why kids were not doing well. And we started on the implementation of the recommendations of that task force. And within a year, our performance had jumped 14 places. That's one. Two is Nairobi, despite being a capital city, there are schools where children were sitting on stones rather than desks. Children were sitting about 100 per class. And I started building classrooms. You'll recall that Olympic in the years gone was the best performing school. There were 100 children per class. I built for them, not even from the county, using my own networks. We built 36 classrooms. We built classrooms in Umoja. We built classrooms at St. Michael's. So we did about 8 to 10 schools. All the schools, water had been disconnected. We reconnected the water. We continued paying electricity. Some of the credits that he claims to be getting, like I know he invited the president to go and launch the database, the computer system. I'm the one who built it. By the time I left, actually we had planned to, we removed the manual processes and started automating them. I recall that when we automated the collection of revenue, even during his campaign, he said he was going to get rid of them. But of course, when he came in, he found that it was very, very useful. And that has continued. So we automated the revenue collection. Yeah. Nairobi requires a lot of needs housing because housing is a big, big problem. Yeah. We started the urban renewal program. And by the time I left, we had already awarded the tenders. I'm sure if we were there, by now we would be on 3rd or 4th floor of these constructions. Ngara, Pangani, Fort Jesus, the Woodley, and Jamhuri. And they were going to be affordable, where you continue to pay the rent you used to pay, whether it's 5,000 to 6,000 shillings. And in 12 to 15 years, the house becomes yours. Nairobi really needs these houses. We started that. Yeah. We did the strategic plan for the mass transit system. We worked with the Ministry of Transport. Though I saw the other day what we had agreed, I didn't sign an agreement. He's taken Ministry of Transport to court. And Nairobi needs a modern mass public transit system. Yeah. And we started working on that, and we go together with Kiambu, we go together with Kajiado, we go together with Machakos and Murang'a. But we must accept that 5 years is a bit too short. When you come into a system that was not working, we had to put plans in place, and we had well started working and implementing some of these plans. Yeah, because numerous of these challenges we see continue to face Nairobians. For instance, you're talking about decongesting the capital. And when he came into the leadership, he talked about no PSVs being allowed into the CBD. But look at that kind of pushback it received, and we're still at the position we are. Garbage, even you had talked about clearing Dandora, but again, it's one of those things that just keep rolling into cycles and cycles. How long do you think it would take to see headway for Nairobi County?
Or is it a sort of leadership we need to be thinking about?
An issue. We must be thinking in the same direction. I remember I worked very closely with national government because Nairobi is not only, it accounts for 60% of our economy. All the embassies are here. All visitors who come into the country or in the region have to come through Nairobi. So you must work very, very closely with national government. And I remember in my closely working with national government, I was even blamed that probably that I was in opposition against my own opposition party. But I realized long before that you cannot run Nairobi unless you work with national government. And this even is supported by the statute, is supported by the Urban Areas and Cities Act. And that's what I tried to do. I know recently the people might not be aware, but there are county roads in Nairobi. There are non-county roads in Nairobi. Non-county roads in Nairobi are managed by Kura and KENHA, which is Kenya National Highways Authority. However, the implementation of these programs, money set aside from the fuel levy, it never goes to City Hall. So somebody saying that Kidero was giving 3.1 billion and we don't know where this money went. The money, yes, was provided, but it was left with Kura. Because Kura manages the implementation of the urban roads network. But we worked together. We advertised them together. We supervised them together. And that's the reason why, I mean, the level of motorability in Nairobi went up from about 30 to 80% during my time.
Do you think there needs to be some sort of streamlining? When you hear Kura, KENHA, roads, some tranches are for the county government, some national government, and the concern even of duplicity has a reason. Do you share that concern?
I don't think there is. Contradictions at all, because I mean the roads that the roads are known which ones are county roads. Though I must say that not everything could be given to counties at the very beginning. As we go along, and counties become proficient in management of their functions, these roads should ultimately be given to the counties to manage. But at the very beginning, I think there was a good reason why KENHA, like, I mean, the roads that KENHA manage cannot be managed by counties, because let's say like the road from Mombasa to Kampala, the Great North Corridor from Namanga passing through Kenya going up, the ones that are connecting various counties, they must be managed centrally. But the ones which are intra-county, they need to be managed by the county. And as the counties become proficient in managing other functions, then they can take them over.
So let's take it back to when you became governor. Transition period, it's a new system of government. Talk to us about how that period was for you.
I think it was, Nairobi wasn't totally new. I mean, you'll call, if you go back into the history of Nairobi, the first chairman was, for the city was in 1910. And Nairobi more or less operated independently all the years. And even the spirit of devolution was following how Nairobi had been managed, because Nairobi was, they had their own health system, they did their roads, they managed their housing, they managed their planning. So devolution was more or less running on the blueprint of Nairobi. But having said that, there was quite a bit of mismanagement when they had to report to the Ministry of Local Government. So by the time we were taking over, it was more or less a shell. We had to put in fresh management systems, fresh management processes. And if there's anything to go by, actually Nairobi suffered because it started receiving less funds. Before devolution, Nairobi was receiving an average 14 billion shillings from national government, right, in addition to what it was collecting. However, using the formula that based on population, based on area, and based on the poverty index, the amount Nairobi gets dropped to 9 billion in the first year. 9 billion wasn't even enough.
Yeah.
The money we were getting was not enough to pay salaries because, one, you knew that a lot of people are employed who are not working. A lot of people on the payroll who've never worked a single day, and there were more employees than they were required. So we were paying an average of 1.5 billion shillings a month. So 9 billion plus a collection, we were getting about 20 billion, and 18 billion was going to the payment of salaries.
Let's focus a little bit on that, the wage bill, because it continues to be a problem even now. Governor Sonko prides himself in paying all salaries in time, but again, the question is, what are these people being paid to do? The ghost workers, remember in your time you talked about them, and now he's offered voluntary early retirement to try and deal with that issue. What's the difficulty in streamlining? Because there's too many people that are not doing much for this county and are being paid salaries.
The number of employees that the county has, there's what you call right skilling. The people who are required are actually not there. The people who are there don't have the necessary skills to make a difference to the running of the county. We did an assessment. When I came in, we had 17,000 employees. That is, the county had 14, and we had another 4 from national government with the devolved functions. And we reduced them. By the time I was leaving, there were about 13. We found that at least 2,500 employees were non-existent. Their names were on the payroll, but nobody knew where they were. And when we stopped their salaries, nobody came to complain that I'm not getting my salaries anymore. So I think there needs to be an assessment that what kind of functions, which is what we started doing, what functions are there, and what are the necessary skills. I believe Nairobi can do with maximum 5,000–6,000 employees. I will work very, very efficiently. The current wage bill is probably double what it should be.
So it's gotten worse now?
No, actually it's come down. I've brought it down, but I'm saying even as we brought it down, even as it came down, it's still more than that they need. Now, I'm wishing Governor Sonko good luck because having to release these people, you need money in the first place.
Yeah, even that.
And even if he doesn't have money to provide services, how is he going to get money to release employees? You
talked about the allocation to Nairobi County. So it contributes as a capital as well, big time, in as far as the revenue the nation collects as a whole. So do you think that needs to be relooked at?
I think it needs to be relooked at because, I mean, it was in the Constitution, which gave the percentages that needs to go based on population, based on area, and based on poverty index. One, what hurt Nairobi? Nairobi is only 690 square kilometers, while the rest of the country, all the other countries, are thousands and thousands and thousands square kilometers. Poverty, there's nothing worse than urban poverty because 90%, 80% of Nairobians live in the informal settlements. They don't have jobs. They don't have social services. Or we tried, I mean, what we could to supply them with water plus sanitary facilities. Nairobi as a city needs special consideration in terms of allocation. The formula that is defined by population, defined by area, and defined by poverty index will not work, can't work. Because, I mean, take for example, if the same is being applied, Turkana was not paying, does not have street lights. Nairobi has 120,000 street lights, and it's necessary. Upcountry or rural counties don't need to collect garbage. They have no need for a dump site. Every Nairobian produces 500 grams of garbage every day. So you need to put money aside. So there needs to be consideration in terms of uniqueness of Nairobi, the unique services that it provides that other counties are not providing. And this needs to have special allocations.
Yeah. Are there functions, looking back at your tenure, that are devolved and you thought perhaps should have remained with the national government, or that have not been devolved and should have been?
I think, as I said, that probably roads. For the other counties, it require time because they did not have the infrastructure. Nairobi has got a fully fledged works department. So Nairobi should be allowed to manage their roads. The money that comes from the fuel levy, the total throughout the country is about 35, 36 billion shillings. I think Nairobi needs to get most of it because of the 100,000 cars that get, the country registers about 10,000 cars a month. Right. And 80% of them are in Nairobi. So most of the traffic is in Nairobi. The alternative thing which should be done is that let every county retain the fuel levy that is retained at the point of fueling. And that would give Nairobi quite an edge instead of pulling it all together and dividing it even to areas that do not make as much contribution. Right
now, with all the challenges, and you've been watching and following, if you were still governor, what are the areas you'd prioritize?
I think so. One, water is a big issue. Yeah. And that's the reason when I got in, Nairobi was producing about 560,000 cubic meters. And through making the system more efficient, we increased it to about 640,000 cubic meters. This city, by the year 2022, will require 1.2 cubic meters of water. And that's the reason why we really pushed working with the Water Ministry and the Water Authority. We put this huge investment of bringing the Northern Collector Tunnel that is going to bring an additional 140,000 cubic meters of water from River Mathioya into Dakaine so that it can serve Nairobi. And I think, I would ensure. The second thing, we lose about 35 to 40% of water in what you call non-revenue water. And non-revenue water is water that you cannot account for. I would reduce that because that I've reduced it. We would reduce it from 40 to 35. We would bring it down to the international levels of about 20%. The one thing you can never do is to supply Nairobians with water from tankers or water bowsers.
Keep seeing them on the road.
You can't, and I know that my successor tried to do that, and I think he's found out that it's impossible, whether it's with the rescue team or not. You can't serve Nairobians with, give them water on water bowsers. Yeah. You need a long-term strategic intervention like the one we've done. We need to recirculate water, which we're not doing. All the 600... harvesting water. Yeah. I'm going to come to that. Yeah. All the 600,000 cubic meters which go in actually go out as wastewater. That needs to be recirculated. Then there's wastewater. There is rainwater. We need to harvest rainwater and purify it. And these three, increasing through sources, harvesting, and recirculating, we should be able to meet the water that's required. The second is the housing, which we started. I know that is in one of the big four that the president is working on. I think this needs to be pushed because Nairobi needs urgently 500,000 houses, habitable houses. Okay. The third thing is the education. We need to look at, I know when we went to primary school, you went to school around where you lived. Actually, for you to be admitted in a primary school or a nursery school, your parents had to go with either the water payment receipt or electricity payment receipt or rent payment receipt, so that you cut this long distant moves where children move from one end of the city to the other end of the city. Yeah. That would have two advantages. One, it would ensure that kids do not get as tired, performance will improve. But two, between 30 to 35% of traffic on the road are dropping kids to school. That will reduce traffic.
Will be reduced.
Yeah.
All right, you are watching Pioneer Governors. We're with Dr. Evans Kidero, former Nairobi Governor. We'll be right back after this break.